4,000 miles west of China. Another tale of celestial beings influencing civilization can be found, this time in what is now modern-day Iraq. The Babylonian legend of Enuma Elish dates back to the 7th century BC. The text was first discovered in 1849 by British archaeologist Sir Austen Henry Layard while searching the ruins of the library of Ashurbanipal in Nineveh. The story tells of how the first humans were created by an extraterrestrial race known as the Anunnaki.
Broadcasting live from the dark and cold dungeons deep beneath the KLAV studios in Las Vegas, Nevada. Prepare yourselves to be taken away into another dimension, as we now have control over your thoughts, fears, and perspective of the unexplained world you dare not speak of. With your hosts, Lindsay Knight and Michael Knight. Ladies and gentlemen, we now open the gates to the paranormal and beyond.
Broadcasting live from the KLAV studios in Las Vegas, Nevada, this is the Paranormal and Beyond. When it comes to our evolution, 92% of the entire Earth's population believes in Darwin's theory of evolution. However, there's another theory that talks about an extraterrestrial intervention like no other, an intervention into the start of human life itself. In a moment, renowned author Marshall Klarfeld will be joining us on the program to possibly answer one of mankind's biggest questions and arguably the most controversial subject of all time as to who created man. And that's all coming up when we turn right here on the Talk of Las Vegas, KLAV 1230 AM.
Your ticket to the unknown is at knightsParanormalResearchSociety.com. UFOs, ghosts, aliens, hauntings, mysterious places, and more can be found at knightsParanormalResearchSociety.com. Knights with a K, ParanormalResearchSociety.com. Based out of Las Vegas, Nevada, Knights Paranormal Research Society is owned and operated by the renowned brother and sister team of Michael and Lindsay Knight. Seeing is believing. And at knightsParanormalResearchSociety.com, you're going to believe. Join us every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, 11 p.m. to midnight, for the Paranormal and Beyond. Join host Michael Knight and Lindsay Knight as they investigate the unexplained and most controversial mysteries of the world. The Paranormal and Beyond, where the paranormal lives on and conspiracies exposed. The Paranormal and Beyond, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, 11 p.m. to midnight. Brought to you by knightsParanormalResearchSociety.com.
Just because you've seen it in the news doesn't mean it's real.
So you're telling me you got physically attacked by a ghost?
Like I can tell you right now, I believe in the paranormal more than I believe in our government.
There are so many mysteries out there that are still yet to be explained.
You folks have some of your facts wrong, and you just keep talking about generalities.
With all due respect, sir, you have not brought anything to the table to prove us wrong.
This is the Paranormal and Beyond, and it's your show. Call us at 731-1230. Here again, Michael Knight and Lindsay Knight.
Welcome back to another brand new edition of the Paranormal and Beyond. But first, be sure to check us out at knightsparanormalresearchsociety.com. Once again, that's knightsparanormalresearchsociety.com. Special shout out to all those listening worldwide through the KLAV1230am.com website, and all of you driving around in the Vegas Valley listening to us on your stereos. I'm your host, Michael Knight. Joined alongside of me is your hostess, Lindsay Knight. And once again, David Gleason of the EOG Sports Hour, which can be heard right here, 10 to 11, is joining us once again. How you all doing?
I'm doing great. Nice to be here again.
Very well, very well.
By the way, thank you, KLAV, for a great Christmas party.
Yeah, they wore me out. I can barely stand, to be quite honest with you.
Yeah, it was great.
Yep, it was awesome.
Until next year,
It was epic, man.
All right.
It was like a Motley Crue after party. It was back when they were on drugs. It was phenomenal.
All right, we got a great show lined up as we have Marshall Klarfeld on hold as we're going to talk about Planet X, Nibiru, everything Anunnaki and the creation of mankind. But first, let's get into today's news.
Topping the news for the paranormal and beyond this Friday, December 6th, bringing you up-to-the-minute news on all the strange and bizarre happenings around the globe. New Yorkers are wondering what the strange sounds that they are hearing resonating from the sky. Odd wailing noises seem to be echoing off buildings in Manhattan, and it's leaving a lot of folks scared. The eerie sounds seem to be coming from the newly constructed Freedom Tower located at One World Trade Center in Manhattan. The structure replaced the original six-building complex of the World Trade Center that was attacked by terrorists on September 11, 2001. At 1,776 feet, the building now takes the rank as the tallest building in the United States. Several people called in to report the loud wailing noises that were heard earlier this week. Some of them were able to record the strange phenomenon and even post it on YouTube. It is a skyquake that are happening everywhere in the world. Really creepy sounds. No one knows where or why they are happening. Some conspiracy people say it's HARP, Michael Arizin said today. Tribeca resident Kenny Cummings told the New York Post that it almost sounds like a Gregorian chant and it will even hold a single note. Other New York residents believe that the new World Trade Center tower is haunted and that screaming sounds are from the ghosts of the victims of the terrorist attacks. The sounds coming from the Freedom Tower might just be the wind, but that doesn't explain other noises that are being heard all over the world. Earlier this year, people in Missouri and Tennessee heard similar sounds. What are these odd noises? That is a question on a lot of people's minds right now. This question may continue to go unanswered. Many officials are left baffled as they're scratching their heads. At this point, nobody seems to know. The geologists say it's not in the ground. The Air Force says it's not in the air. The astronomers say it's not from space, so we're running out of options, one official said. Some people think that the weird noises are paranormal related. Others say that they are extraterrestrial based, and other folks claim that they have a biblical meaning. Others believe that there is more specific explanation, or is it a hoax? As of right now, no one seems to have a clear answer as to what these strange sounds may be. Reporting the news for the paranormal and beyond, this is Lindsay Knight.
Okay, that's very, very creepy, ain't it? To sit there and hear voices and sounds coming, and it's scary if that's our government manipulating us once again. You know, be prepared. Something is coming, and I know everybody's going to wake up here really quick, really, really soon. Just like our show today, so let's get right into it. Our special guest, renowned author Marshall Klarfeld, a Caltech graduate engineer, benefited greatly from his 50-year career in business and politics. His current pursuit of the history of the Anunnaki has propelled him into the field of ancient history, in which upon his recent research has uncovered what could be the defining moment in archaeology altogether. His beliefs and the information in his book, The Anunnaki Was Here, may rank it amongst the top 10 most important archaeological finds of the 21st century. Recent Marshall completed a book, Adam, the Missing Link, which blows the lid off closely to a held package of historical and scientific facts proving that the human race was created by alien genetic engineering technology nearly 250,000 years ago. The Paranormal and Beyond. We'd like to welcome to the program Marshall Klarfeld. How you doing? Marshall, you there?
Yes, we're here. Can you hear me?
Oh yeah, this is a very, very interesting topic for me because of just everything's basically written in stone.
That's right, Michael. It was all uncovered in the sands of Iraq back in the 1800s, and it's a robust database of information that I think we should share with everybody that's interested in where we came from.
Oh, absolutely. I think it's the biggest question of mankind itself. And the story behind, the Anunnaki, it's very compelling, but yet very scary.
Well, I don't think it's going to scare very many people today. I mean, we are being exposed almost daily with UFO sightings, and I think the public is watching TV series like the Ancient Alien series, and they're starting to answer some of the questions of the mysteries that have haunted our research into where we came from. To me, I think it's kind of an open book. I just go in there and read what they wrote and put it together, and that's how I created my books. My stories are explaining the history of the Anunnaki. We have 3 books out there right now. You mentioned the third one, The Anunnaki Were Here, which is most recent publication.
Now, the Anunnaki actually was told from the Sumerians, right?
Yes. Yeah, the Sumerians was the first civilization, Lindsay, that we have any written record of. The cuneiform tablets, which were discovered in the sands of Iraq, tell the story of their coexistence with these, they called them Anunnaki lords at that time. They had not progressed into the small g gods yet, but they lived together around 4,600 years ago in a city called Iraq. And our second book, Gilgamesh 10, tells that story of the interaction between this extraterrestrial species and humans that were living at that time, the Sumerians.
Now, let me ask you a question, because, and I'm going to go off of this, and you can, quote me if I'm wrong or not, but the Bible says that we were created, 6,000 years ago?
Yeah. Well, the Bible, I don't think, puts a date on anything. It just says that, if you go to Genesis 6:4, Lindsay, it says the Nefilim were upon the earth in those days. They were the sons of God, and they came unto the daughters of man and created the giants of old. These were the men of renown, and everybody, including the author Zechariah Sitchin, wanted to know who were the Nefilim mentioned in the Bible. Well, it now appears that the Nefilim were those who from heaven came to earth, and that's the story of the Anunnaki as described by the Sumerians in their writings. By the way, that was the first civilization, Lindsay, that had all the firsts. It's amazing that they kind of came out of nowhere, and here they had writing and philosophy and music and mathematics, astronomy, astrology. And what they said in their writings was that everything we have was given to us by the Anunnaki. Now, that to me is technology transfer, and it happens in history over and over and over again.
How many tablets were actually discovered?
Well, up to date, they think there's over 300,000 that have been found. 120,000 of them are in the British Museum. And the kings in those days collected the best of the best and had them in libraries. And the ones that Zechariah Sitchin translated was over 2,000 of the important ones that were scientific, that told about the creation of the earth and the people. It's called Enuma Elish, and it was translated, and it tells this fascinating story of the adventure of these extraterrestrials who came from their home planet, which is Nibiru, captured into our solar system, and that they colonized Earth about 30,000 years ago. But that was just, there were no humans at that time, Lindsay. They were just the Anunnaki, and they came to this planet in the search of gold, and about 210 or 20,000 years ago, they created a primitive worker to help in their gold mining operations, and the primitive worker was the first Homo Sapien.
Wow, that's very compelling, and to sit there and think that we're actually basically a slave race.
Well, we're bicameral. The original, they needed workers in their gold mines. Their own workers kind of mutinied on them, according to the stories in the cuneiform tablets. And so to make a solution to get somebody to work, they needed primitive workers. You're correct about that. And you could call them slaves if you wanted to. But what they did was a genetic engineering deal. It's kind of made a bicameral species. In other words, there was a species on planet Earth at that time. It was called Homo Erectus. And Homo Erectus had been evolving on our planet for about 1,800,000 years. And they didn't have any vocal cords. They couldn't talk, and their brain capacity was about a third ours. So they were kind of useless to an advanced species like the Anunnaki to employ in their gold mining operations. So they took the The story in the cuneiform tablets describes this very succinctly. They took the female egg from the Homo erectus and they scooped out the nucleus and they put their DNA in it and they planted that egg in one of their females, a birth mother, an Anunnaki birth mother. And after a lot of experimentation, some mistakes were made, they finally created what they called Adamu, Adamu. And this was the first primitive worker. And there's a cylinder seal, which in addition, Lindsay, to the cuneiform tablets, we have several thousands of what's called cylinder seals. I don't know if you're familiar with those or
I
not.
do.
You are?
Well, I've read about it, actually.
Yeah, well, they're kind of a unique thing. It's like a data storage device. It's a little, like a wine cork. It's about the size of a wine cork. And it's made out of a hematite, which is a very hard stone. It's as hard as steel. And engraved around the surface of the cylinder seal is a negative image. And when you take that cylinder and roll it on wet clay, it gives you a positive picture story. So you can see what the images were, what the actually Anunnaki look like.
They are the first, let's just say, that actually did like the printing, correct?
Yeah. Well, it's like, we have storage devices. You and I and all the people listening to your show have devices that store information, but they won't last very long. They won't last more than 100 years, perhaps. This cylinder seal has information on it that's lasted for over 6,000 years. We have yet to create a device which will give us information to the next future, 2,000 years from now when they're digging around in the rubble of our civilization. They want to know what we were all about. We've got to create some kind of a storage device that's as good as the Anunnaki did with their cylinder seals. I think it's an amazing piece of technology when you consider something as hard as steel and you have to engrave negative images. And on one of them, it's so precise, Lindsay, it shows they have high-heeled shoes.
Right. Well, I know they were, just by looking and because, on those tablets, there's so many pictures like the seated giant, which is one of the most famous ones.
Yes.
Not only that, just the technology that they had and that the way they printed these, because these are the first tablets ever discovered that has any kind of written language on it.
That's right. And the language was Sumerian. It's quite a unique language. There's it's extinct now. Nobody speaks Sumerian anymore or writes it. But I believe personally that was the language of the Anunnaki, because if all the folks in the Sumerian civilization were speaking Sumerian, and they were the offspring of Anunnaki females, they must have talked to the babies as they brought them up, and the language that they spoke was the language that the new breed Homo Sapiens spoke. So I believe that was the first spoken language of humans on this planet.
So let's go back further, because it was the Anunnaki, and then the Sumerians learned from the Anunnaki. Yes?
Correct.
Okay, now let's go back to the Anunnaki. How far back can you predate, or have they predated the Anunnaki?
Well, nobody really knows the history of the Anunnaki on their home planet. All we have is a record of when they came here, and the record seems to reveal that they came here about 400,000 plus years ago and started colonizing planet Earth. With their mission was to gather our gold and send it back to their home planet, which was losing its atmosphere due to an ozone leak. And what they were doing was powdering the gold and scattering it up in the ozone layer of their atmosphere, and it reflected the sun out and helped heal the leak and save their atmosphere. They really, without an atmosphere, were a society that was doomed. You can look at it like they were a spaceship traveling out into space, and if they lost their protective shield, their internal oxygen system, they would all perish. That's what would happen to their planet if they didn't close up their atmosphere. We have an ozone leak in our atmosphere, too. We might consider doing the same thing.
Are you familiar with the new, I don't know if it was a femur bone that was just recently discovered, and scientists say they're baffled by it. It goes back 450,000 years? Yes.
I just read that article a couple of days ago, and I'm quite fascinated that they finally traced the DNA back that far. You see, there's a big gap in evolution. The theory of evolution is filled with holes, and we didn't actually evolve directly from Homo erectus. If there was an evolutionary process, Lindsay, there would be skeletal remains of humans or of the species in between Homo erectus and Homo sapiens, and there are none. That's why I called my first book Adam the Missing Link, because we appear 200,000 plus years ago as a new species without any evolutionary heredity. So this bone that they've discovered, which has DNA, which they are connecting to our species, being 400,000 years ago, kind of coincides with the arrival on this planet and the colonization by the Anunnaki. Now, they were a species that was very tall. They were described as over 9 feet tall. They were blonde, blue-eyed, and Caucasian in features. So when people ask me, what did they look like? Did they look like us? I say, no, we look like them, because that's where we came from. We all share their DNA. It's an interesting story.
Oh, very riveting as well. What had happened that we had to revolt at some time, because we would inherit their attributes as well, right? With loving gold and, we did the whole slavery thing in the United States as well as other countries. So we do have traits.
Also, the traits that they have, Michael, where they love to make war. They were a very warlike species, and they pursued gold. And by the way, they were, according to the stories that are in the cuneiform tablets, they were oversexed. They were quite sexually active in their own personal lives. So if you look at our species, we kind of have the same attributes. We're, I would assume, warlike in nature. We seek gold, and we're probably oversexed.
Now, if they were splicing up our DNA, trying to get it right, could it be like when you have those mythological creatures like the centaurs and all those other ones that were in myth back then, could that have been a mock-up of something that they created that was...
Well, it could have been, Lindsay. You've hit on a very interesting point, which hasn't been proven yet, but there's people like myself who have kind of speculated that the trial and error process that they did before they arrived at Homo sapiens, us, was that they used animal experimentation with their DNA, and they created kind of monsters. And maybe the mythical characters that we see, humans with horse-like bodies and wings and stuff like that, were the mistakes that they made.
But that's not so far off from the technology today, because we do have cloning going on. And
well, no, there's a difference between cloning and bicameral genetic engineering. The process that they used was genetic engineering, and what they produced was a species. The first Adam and Eve, for instance, the first Homo sapiens, were similar in that they were sterile. If you cross-breed a horse and a donkey, you get a mule. And a mule is a species that cannot reproduce itself. It's sterile. So the first successful Homo sapiens that they created couldn't reproduce. And if you go to the Bible, you'll see stories like Adam's rib. The operation that was performed was kind of an echo of what was necessarily done, because the Anunnaki birth mothers weren't going to produce all of us. They wanted us to reproduce themselves. So they did another operation, which they took some four-way. There was Adam and Eve, and then a male and a female Anunnaki, and somehow they created fertility in Eve, the female Homo sapiens, so that then we could reproduce, and we did a good job.
Besides the Sumerians, who pretty much brought it to the table and let everybody else in the world know, even up to today, that the Anunnaki existed, is there any other tablets or any other writings anywhere in the world that was discovered that proves that the Anunnaki did exist?
Well, yes. To me, there are many civilizations that I've written about in my books that were so advanced that they had, like the Egyptian civilization was a beautiful civilization. And the story in the cuneiform tablets was that the leaders, there was two leaders, Enlil and Enki, were divided up the territory of the earth, and in the southern part, called the Abzu, was Enki's prevail, and that he was not allowed to be in the original city, which was Eridu, which was his home, and therefore he created another civilization. This is my belief, that the Egyptian civilization, and then later on, like 5,000 years ago, the Mesoamerican civilizations, the Mayan and the Incas, those advanced civilizations were the work of the son of Enki, named Thoth, and when he came over to this new world, he was called Quetzalcoatl. So there is evidence of the Anunnaki offspring being involved in later advanced civilizations. Perhaps, excuse me, when the Spanish conquistadors discovered the Incas, they were, excuse me, they were amazed at the advanced nature of their cities, what they had built. They hadn't seen anything like Tiwanaku and Teotihuacan. These were huge metropolises that were built out of stone, and they absolutely didn't think that the local folks could have done all that. Just like in Egypt, we don't think that the Egyptians built the pyramids.
Now, I know you're very familiar. I don't know how familiar you are with Atlantis, Lemuria, and Mu, but when they talk about these three different civilizations or cities that were built. Hello?
You're talking about Atlantis.
Atlantis, correct. Atlantis, Lemuria, Mu. When they specifically Atlantis, they talk about a civilization that was so well advanced, and there were a species that were so tall, and they had a lot of, like, I don't know, some kind of power or whatnot. And then when Atlantis blew up, they all split into different continents. Like
that's right. Well, now, if you remember the story that Plato told about Atlantis in his writings, the god with a small g who built Atlantis was called Poseidon. And if you trace the Greek god Poseidon back to the Sumerians, his name was Enki. He was the water god. And he was the brother of Enlil, and they were the sons of Anu. Anu was the king of the Anunnaki. And the entire civilization of Atlantis was credited to Poseidon, who in reality was Enki. Enki built this, I think, marvelous island empire with all the advanced technology that he had and created, to be his home away from home, because he was not allowed to go back to Sumeria, which was Mesopotamia at that time. So he said, okay, guys, this is my interpretation, Lindsay, strictly Klarfeld here. I'll show you what I can do. And so that I credit the advanced technology of the Anunnaki to have developed Atlantis, and the folks that when that island was destroyed in the flood. You know, Homer said it was 9,000 years ago. He got the story from the Egyptians through a guy named Solon. Solon was the great Greek philosopher who came home and told Plato the story of Atlantis. And they put the time frame at 9,000 years. It disappeared. Well, at his time, that was like 300 B.C., so that's another 2,000 years. So that makes it was at least 11,000 years that Atlantis was there. And if you remember, or if your folks want to do the research on it, there was a great flood. And the great flood happened about 11,500 years ago. And it destroyed almost every living thing on the planet Earth, and all the civilizations that had been developed before that were decimated by this gigantic tsunami that came out of the Southern Ocean when the ice shelf slid in, and it wiped everything out and covered the Earth with, about 2 or 3 miles thick of mud. So Atlantis disappears, according to the history of Plato told us, about the same time as the Great Flood.
Wow, that's interesting.
That kind of ties it together.
Marshall, we're going to take a quick break here. When we turn more with Marshall Klarfeld, and we're going to go into Egyptian and just technology itself in the past that we don't know about, and time itself. Are we missing time here? When we turn right here on the Talk of Las Vegas, KLAV 1230 AM.
You're listening to the Paranormal and Beyond. Join us at 731-1230. That's 731-1230. Lindsay and Michael return after this. Join us every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, 11 p.m. to midnight, for the Paranormal and Beyond. Join host Michael Knight and Lindsay Knight as they investigate the unexplained and most controversial mysteries of the world. The Paranormal and Beyond, where the paranormal lives on and conspiracies exposed. The Paranormal and Beyond, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, 11 p.m. to midnight. Brought to you by Knight's Paranormal Research Society.com. Your ticket to the unknown is at Knight's Paranormal Research Society.com. UFOs, ghosts, aliens, hauntings, mysterious places, and more can be found at Knight's Paranormal Research Society.com. Knights with a K, Paranormal Research Society.com. Based out of Las Vegas, Nevada, Knights Paranormal Research Society is owned and operated by the renowned brother and sister team of Michael and Lindsay Knight. Seeing is believing. And at Knight's Paranormal Research Society.com, you're going to believe.
You are now in the mix with the Paranormal Beyond, only on KLAV 1:30 a.m.
Welcome back to the Paranormal and Beyond. Join us at 731-1230. Here again, Lindsay and Michael.
All right, if you're just tuning in, we are talking with Marshall Klarfeld about the Anunnaki and Planet X and the creation of man. But first, remember to check out Knight's Paranormal Research Society.com. All right, let's get right into it. Marshall, I got to ask you this. Egypt itself is fascinating. Does that have any ties, and I'm talking about the pyramids here, to the Anunnaki, seeing that they build stuff to last? Could this be an iconic clue?
Yes, well, absolutely. In the writings, Michael, they talk about how they built the pyramids and why they built them. This is the Anunnaki, and they were probably built 10,500 years ago. There's been some recent research on the Sphinx, and the Sphinx was built in honor of the architect of the pyramids. In fact, the face of the son of Enki was originally on the Sphinx, and he became Thoth, T-O-T-H, and he was the power behind the Egyptian civilization, created their language. The hieroglyphic glyphs that you see all over the Egyptian obelisks and so forth was a new language that he created, I think, for the Egyptians. But there's writings, there's a written record in this database that I told you about, which is the cuneiform tablets, that absolutely credits the creation of the pyramids to the Anunnaki. They needed it for their spaceport navigation. Originally, the pyramids were covered with white limestone called the casing stones, and these were so brilliantly polished that they reflected the sun to the horizon on all four sides of the two giant pyramids at Giza, and they lined up that sight line with the twin peaks at Mount Ararat, which were snow-covered all year round, and they had a beautiful line which intersected their landing platform, which was at Baalbek, Lebanon.
Now, you talked about Mount Ararat.
Yes.
Could Noah's Ark, if it is Noah's Ark, could it be up there?
Well, the Ark, let's talk about, Lindsay. Yes, it's possible that it could be there, but it wasn't a ship as everybody is depicting it as floating on top of the water. It was actually a submersible, and we have a diagram picture of it on the Karnak Temple, which is in one of my books. I reproduce this ceiling frieze, which shows the Ark as a submarine with a snorkel on it. And the reason it had to be a submersible was that the flood was not rain, it was a tsunami. In order for a vessel to survive a tsunami, it had to be submersible that could tumble and survive. A ship that sat on top of the waves would have absolutely been destroyed by this wave. So there's a little misinterpretation of what the Ark really was, and it did end up on Mount Ararat. And there is a story in the cuneiform tablets that comes from the 11th tablet of the Epic of Gilgamesh, which was my second book called Gilgamesh 10, which tells the real story before the Bible of what happened during that time when humans were at risk and when the Anunnaki were in control of by this leader called Enlil. And Enlil really wanted us all to go away. He was quite perturbed with the intermarriage, the diluting of their bloodline with humans. See, the Anunnaki the sons of the Anunnaki coveted the daughters of man, and they had this inbreeding. And the story of Gilgamesh, interestingly enough, is about King Gilgamesh, who was this half-breed. He was 2/3 Anunnaki and 1/3 human, a giant rumbling around as the king of Uruk. And that story, I think, tells many, many interesting things about the Anunnaki and their coexistence with humans. But the civilization in Egypt, yes, it was definitely created by the Anunnaki, by this son of Enki called Thoth. And for 1,500 years he was in charge of that civilization, gave them their beautiful written, or their hieroglyphics, and also the designs of many of their temples, the Karnak temple, and their beautiful costumes and their glorious gold workings were, I'm positive, given to them in an art form by the Anunnaki leader Thoth. Later, Thoth was expelled through a inter-family warfare that was going on between the Enki clan and the Enlil clan, and so he went to the New World, and that was about 3113 BC, which is about 5,500 years ago, and started the civilizations of the Central American pyramid building, gold seeking, and the Incas and the Mayans, and they're all credited to. He was called, when he came over to the New World, by many names. The one that's most familiar to archaeologists is Quetzalcoatl.
So I got to ask you this. It's a long time. It's a lot of history. Do we absolutely know how far back the pyramids actually go? And were they the first ones built, then the Egyptians came?
Yes.
So the Egyptians didn't build the pyramids.
Put it this way, Michael. If the Sphinx is 10,500 years ago, that means that probably the pyramids were built at the same time as the Sphinx was. And 10,500 years ago, there were no Egyptians. Okay? So
yeah, that's what got me too, because you see these old texts of them building pyramids, but you don't see the Egyptians talking about building their own pyramids.
Oh well, there's never been a pharaoh found buried in any of the pyramids. There's no writings inside of them. They decorated their tombs with their beautiful designs, which we have many records of, and their hieroglyphics. But none of that's ever been found in any pyramid. So.
And they had advanced technology as well, because they had to light up the inside and stuff like that. Do you believe they had electricity?
Well, they had a form of light. Yes, they could generate. They had batteries and so forth. And they were, let's look at it this way. We're just creeping into our space age, Michael. We're a very young civilization in the galaxies. If they came to this planet 400,000 years ago, their civilization was probably 1 million years more advanced than ours, and we don't really know all the technology yet that they had. We're starting to reverse engineer things to get to that point, but I can't tell you for certain what they use for lighting inside the pyramids, but if you look at the intricacies of the Great Pyramid, the internal structure of the Great Pyramid, it's the most fascinating thing that's ever been achieved in stone construction. Do you realize that all of the passages and all of the king's chamber and the queen's chamber are watertight? Did you know that?
Yes.
Okay. And the reason they were watertight was I have in my new book the theory of how that system worked. That's called The Anunnaki Were Here. By the way, any of your audience that's interested can go to my webpage and look at these books. They're on displays. My webpage is www.adamthemissinglink.com. and they can just peruse around on that 2-page site and see this information. It's on display there.
Was the pyramid some kind of power source as well?
It could have been, Michael, but I think originally it was a gold mining device, that they took the Nile River water, which was filled with placer gold, and they managed to pump it up into the dam. There was a dam built around the Great Pyramid so that the water level rose up to the entrance, which was above ground. And then it went shooting down this 26-degree tunnel, which was carved perfectly, square tunnel, carved right through the pyramid and down through the granite base of the pyramid into the pit, and where the pit had what was called a hydraulic pulse pump, which just through the action of the water coming down would pump it back up into the grand gallery, and it would surge up and down. It just kept pumping. We had developed these hydraulic pulse pumps before the 1700s. They were quite frequently used because there was no electricity. When electricity came into our civilization, we had electrical pumps, but before that there were hydraulic pulse pumps. And if you look at my diagram in the end of the book, Anunnaki Were Here, it shows quite clearly how this interior of the Great Pyramid worked and functioned as a gold mining device.
I got to ask you as well as, what was the separation point? Obviously, we're not partners up with the Anunnaki right now. Are they still here? And what caused Homo sapiens to go their own way?
Well, look at it this way. They created our species, the Homo sapiens. And then they created another species later on called Homo sapiens sapiens, and that's another story. But when they phased off, the story that we have determined from the database was that they got to the point where they felt that our civilization was advanced enough that they could not be interfering with us anymore. So in the story of Gilgamesh 10, I tell the tale about they were told by their deity. By the way, this is an interesting point, Michael and Lindsay. They had a deity, and they called their deity the creator of all. So if you ask yourself the question, how could a civilization 1,000,000 years more advanced than us still believe in a deity? Well, they did, because they didn't have the answers to where they came from. And that's another question. Where did they come from? So, yes, they phased off. I don't think there's any of them still here, but they were told in this story, Michael, that they couldn't go home. They couldn't go back to Nibiru. They'd been on this environment close to the sun for so long that they had started to age more quickly than they were supposed to. These species was semi-immortal. They lived for thousands and thousands of years because they keep appearing in all these civilizations. They were in the Roman civilization, they were in the Greek civilization, Babylonians, Akkadians, and back to the Sumerians. So for 6,000 years we have these same individuals.
Let's talk about Planet X, their home. Is it supposed to orbit near Earth, and they use it as a jumping point because it's the closest, distance, and then it always come back? Yeah, well,
they had a mothership orbiting Earth that was their base station, just like we would do when we go to Mars. We'll have a mothership orbiting Mars. And the mothership left planet Earth and went probably somewhere nearby, like, let's say, Mercury, so that if they couldn't go home to Nibiru, their home planet, because they would die, they stayed on the mothership, and they're very close. Now, their planet is on a 3,600-year orbit, as you probably read about, and it won't be due back into our inner solar system for another 1,600 years, according to the calculations that Zechariah and I made together.
Do you think the inhabitants of Planet X still are alive?
Yes, I think there's still civilization alive on Planet X, but they won't be in the near proximity for like 1,600 more years, according to the calculations. And if they wanted to come back, Michael, they could just bring the mothership back from wherever it's hanging out. If it's orbiting around Mercury, say it's close enough that they could come back anytime they wanted to. And the people who are afraid of this return shouldn't be afraid, because I believe that if they wanted to come back and do bad things to us, they would have done it a long time ago, Michael. It's very easy for them to return to their, we're their creation. And the destiny that they were told was that their destiny was to come to planet Earth. This was given to them by their creator of all, to create humans. And the destiny of humans, you and I, is to inherit planet Earth and take care of it. Now, I think we're doing a pretty bum job right now.
Yeah, we are.
When I mentioned the word Marduk, what does that mean?
Okay, Marduk was the son, the firstborn son of Enki. And Marduk was the bad seed, Lindsay. He was the troublemaker. And I think that we have certain things going on this planet that I've researched and believe are the direct result of his interference and causing. He's a troublemaker. He wanted to be successful. In other words, in their bloodline history, the king had a purebred son, Enlil, the second born. The firstborn was Enki, who was born from a concubine, so he wasn't pureblood. And his son, Enki's son, was Marduk. And Marduk always wanted, he said, you were the firstborn, Dad. Father, he called him. And this is all from the translations. I'm not making this up, folks. You can read this if you want to take the time to find the translations. You'll see this story.
You know, when it comes to the Anunnaki, how much of an impact does it have on society today? Because you have the Bible, a lot of people believe that because of religion and believe that story.
Was created by the Anunnaki for control. In other words, when you have a small number of powerful people, like there maybe were 600 or 1,000 of the Anunnaki, and there are millions of us, and the way to control vast amounts is to have a mechanism, and the mechanism at first they brought down was called kingship, and then after kingship they brought religion. And religion was a way to control the masses, and it's still in effect today. If you look at the powerful religions in the world, they control their people. But these religions were the creation, I believe, of the Anunnaki as a means to control us.
But
and it's still going on, even though they're not here in present. But the system that they set up is affecting our civilization, you and I, Michael.
Did the Homo Sapiens push out the Anunnaki? Did they, I mean, like I'm saying, did they expect they were going to create?
No, I don't think so. I think they left on their own. And I think they educated the Homo Sapiens sapien. I mentioned that earlier.
Yeah.
The Enki produced children directly from a female human. That was TT and Adapa. And these were the first Homo sapiens sapiens. They were much more intelligent than the original slave species. And this species was what you and I are. We are Homo sapiens sapiens. And we were so easy to teach that they gave their knowledge to us. They transferred the stuff that we needed to know to have a civilization to survive. And once we got to that point, I think they felt that they didn't need to hang around anymore, so they phased off the planet. That's just speculation on my part.
But is that what they wanted, for us to go in this direction, or were we too smart? And
good question, Lindsay. I mean, I think you could write a book about that, speculating on what they thought we were capable of. But I think the idea might have been that their creator of all, their deity, told them that the destiny of the Anunnaki was to come to the planet Earth to create humans, and it was humans' destiny to take care of the Earth. And then they thought maybe we were able to do that. But if we don't, we're at the point in our advanced mini space age civilization that we could destroy this planet. We have rockets and we have atomic weapons.
No, we could probably supernova this planet if we tried. There's no
Well,
guarantee.
now, here's an interesting thing. In all their smarts, Michael, they created an atomic war in the Sinai Desert 4,000 years ago. If you read the Bible about Sodom and Gomorrah, and you read the destruction that happened at Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and you relate it to the story in the Bible of Sodom and Gomorrah, these cities were atomically destroyed.
Oh, absolutely. If they're happening now, they were happening in the past as well.
And what happened, they didn't, as smart as they were, Michael, they didn't realize that the radiation fallout, the evil wind, which drifted to the east, and it went over the Sumerian civilization, which was their golden city on the hill, and it wiped it out. People have often wondered what happened to the Sumerians. Well, they were destroyed by nuclear fallout. And that's written in the cuneiform tablets, that whole story, and it's called the Great Calamity. So history tends to repeat itself, and we really need to understand this story, Lindsay and Michael, because if we don't, we're going to repeat the same mistakes that they made. Well, and that'll be the end of it.
That's what it's looking like today. I mean, I think we've gone so far. It's going to take a mass wake-up call for everybody.
I that your program, and you're talking about the Anunnaki and the history of us as humans and them as an extraterrestrial species, will open the minds of folks. And that's why I encourage them to visit my website and get a handle on what our history was, because once we understand that, we'll be better equipped.
You think they'll be returning?
Yeah, I think they'll come back when. Here's my hope: that they don't want us to destroy ourselves, because we're kind of their experiment. We're their offspring. We share their DNA. They should have a vested interest in preserving this experiment here on planet Earth. And if it looks like we're about to nuke ourselves, I think they could come and neutralize all of our weapons. They have that technology. They could just say, okay, let's start over again. You guys are, you're at the tipping point. That's my positive outlook on it.
Do you think they're today, with a lot of mass UFO sightings and stuff like that, do you think that they're observing and stopping stuff, like, saving?
Yeah, there have been reports of UFOs that have gone over some of our missile sites and deactivated them.
That, and that happened so many times. There's one report where they launched a ICBM to test it out, and something knocked it out of the air.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that was recorded. So obviously there's a theme there that, we're like important, but yet the planet is very important to them.
That's the most important thing. And our destiny was to take care of the planet. And we're not doing a very good job, because we're too interested in a lot of things that aren't helpful to the planet.
Yeah, it's looking like we're about to push the rewind button again here shortly.
You got it. You got it. I think that you and I, hopefully by exposing this story in its full impact on our civilization, would help solve this problem. Because I think if all the people in the world realize where we came from and what our religions were really created for, it would be helpful in solving some of our most intense problems.
You think people are ready for a disclosure like that?
Yes, I absolutely believe that, and I believe that this fear of exposing it is strictly government-run. It's government-based. They don't want to lose control, and they recognize that once people understand their history, that the power that the governments have concealing this information would be revealed, and they would be threatened.
All right,
so that's why it's being suppressed. That's my take on it.
Oh, absolutely. All right, tell everybody where they can pick up your book.
Okay, it's at the website. My website is www.adamthemissinglink.com. You can use my name, Marshall Klarfeld, in Google. You'll find it that way, or just type in www.adamthemissinglink.com, and you'll see the history of the Anunnaki in 3 versions. I've got a 4th version. It'll be coming out next year, another book. But right now, I think the basis of understanding, my books are 8.5 by 11, Michael. They're like Life magazine. They're filled with colored pictures. It's an easy read, and it's a great gift for anybody that has friends that they want to bring into the subject. But actually, the pictures tell the story. I just fill in a few words to explain what's going on.
All right, Adam, we are out of time, but I call you Adam? I'm thinking of the creation, man. All right, Marshall, thank you for being on the program.
Thank you so much. It was very interesting talking to you, and I hope to, read your new book coming out soon.
All right.
Okay.
Everybody out there, return here back on Monday, because Rick Dyer's at it again. Says he shot a Bigfoot and killed it. He'll be in the studio Monday at 11. So everybody out there, enjoy your weekend.
Will the Bigfoot carcass be here in the studio?
I don't know. I hope he brought it. A lot of Facebook updates, but that's Monday. So tune in then. Everybody out there, have a safe weekend, and see you right back here on Monday. Take care, everybody. Good night.